In this video, we are going to cover safely loading and unloading the cocked Lancehead crossbow. When loading an arrow, hold it by placing your index finger on top of the arrow shaft between the two same color fletching vanes, and pinching these vanes together against your index finger using your middle finger and your thumb. Position your ring finger and pinky on top of the shaft, just behind the fletching, to steady the arrow. This method keeps your fingers away from the travel path of the bowstring. Point the tip of the arrow through the space within the spreader. Make sure your arrow tip does not touch any strings or cables, as it may cause damage, especially with a sharp broadhead. If this happens, stop and visually inspect the strings and cables to check for any damage. Immediately replace any worn or damaged strings or cables. Locate the odd color fletching vane. It is a different color from the other fletching vanes on the arrow. And insert this odd color vane into the arrow's flight groove along the rail so that the arrow shaft is supported within the flight groove, as this is critical to ensure the half moon shape of the arrow nock is aligned to seat into the bowstring. Otherwise, you may misfire the arrow, potentially causing personal injury, damage to the bow, or other property damage. Using the tips of your finger on top of the arrow, slide the nock of the crossbow arrow under the arrow retention spring along the rail's flight groove. Continue sliding the arrow shaft into the trigger box's string slot until it stops against the bowstring. If the nock is not seated against the bowstring, shooting it may cause severe damage to the arrow and the crossbow, potentially resulting in severe injury. Each time, immediately before you shoot, double check the arrow nock is properly seated by using your fingertips to slide the arrow along the rail into the trigger release until the arrow stops with the nock firmly against the bowstring. Before attempting to unload an arrow, first check that your safety switch is in the safe position. To unload an arrow, use the tips of your finger on top of the arrow and slide the crossbow arrow forward on the rail until the fletching is clear of the scope mount. Remove the crossbow arrow by grabbing the two top side fletching vanes. Remember to immediately return your crossbow arrow securely into the quiver to avoid contact with sharp points or the broadhead.